Motormouth Jenkins here, welcoming you to our brand new YouTube channel. Hope that you'll come back and see every segment each and every week, and I will share preventative maintenance tips and regularly scheduled maintenance tips for your car. So whether you know a little bit about your car or absolutely nothing, this is the channel just for you, where I share over 35 years of experience as a qualified and licensed service technician with truck and coach, light truck and passenger vehicles. Come back and visit us and tell your friends, and we'll see you each and every week right here in the Car Connection Workshop on YouTube. And welcome back to the Car Connection and the Car Connection Workshop. Your host, Niall Motormouth Jenkins. And yes, we are outside, and we're trying to wrap up a few segments and some repairs on vehicles that we've pulled in this summer. The shop is full for the winter, and so we're going to carry on with our 97 Jeep TJ Wrangler. And we've done most of the mechanical. We're on the front end now, wrapping things up, and with brakes, front brakes. And I have to tell you, you got to get some of these gloves. These are called Fred gloves. Why? Because I get them from Fred, and I find these great to work with outside. I'm not really into the latex gloves and the rubber gloves. They drive me crazy. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Front brakes. How do I do it? Well, I've been licensed since 1988. I hold a 310S and a 310T license in Canada, Ontario, and the Maritimes and the Western provinces. And I've never done a poor brake job, and I will never do a cheap brake job. Somebody asks me and brings me their own parts, and I'm not familiar with them, they look cheap and nasty, I turn the job down. I never put a bad brake job out in the world, and I'm not about to now. And you don't have to. You don't need to buy top of the line parts. You don't need to buy bottom of the barrel parts. I always look for something in between, and that's what I have right here. So here's how I start. Here's my rotor. And I love this brand because look at how it's nicely bagged. It's very nicely bagged, and they're painted. So all I need to do is take my brake clean, and this is non-chlorified chlorinated brake clean. I use it all the time. None of these parts, none of the materials are sponsors of our show in any way, shape, or form, or sponsor me even personally. So I use the brake clean. I don't take any sanding disc to these whatsoever. I just use a perfectly clean cloth. And here's where you got to work clean. If you got your Fred gloves on, just take them off while you do this. I fold it into 4, and then I shoot one side, just like that. Let that sit for a second. Then I take my cloth. My hands are fairly clean, because you don't want to put contaminants on the disc brake rotor or on the pad surface, because that's where you get something called NVH when you're done. Do you know what that is? That stands for noise, vibration, and harshness. You're going to end up with a lousy, in your ear, sound like a city bus every time you put the brakes on, because you contaminated the materials. So you got to work clean. Again, to the front, I spray it on there. If you want to go ahead and put what we call a bidirectional surface on there, you can do that. I have discs for doing it, but with the metallic pads, I find that it's not really necessary, because the metallic pads are like files. And what happens with metallic pads is you're squeezing both sides of the rotor. The pads are metal. Metal transfers from the rotor to the pad and back to the rotor on both sides. So they're like files. Okay, so this is clean. It's ready to go on. So what I do is I take the bag, I turn it inside out, because the oily residue from the rotor is now on the outside. So keep an eye, because I work fast and I work efficient. And no, I can't pull a rabbit out of my pocket, but I can pull a monkey out of my socks. So just so you know. All right, next, your brake pads. This is where I see a ton of mistakes. You open the box. If there's any literature, you know what you need to do? You need to sit and read the literature so that you don't miss something. In this particular brand, and because it's a Jeep, they're showing you that these little guys right here, they're called shims, and they're not all the same. They're different thicknesses. So why is that? Well, that's what I'm going to show you. If you look at this, see if you can grab that, John. It shows the brake pad. I don't have anything to point with. Let's use this. We have the brake pad here. This is the saddle. And where the bottom of the brake pad sits in the saddle and the top, you see the ears to the brake pads? And here, showing you where you're going to place the shim. Here's a picture of the shim. It's going to go on the, they call it the toe, I call it the heel. Doesn't matter. It's going on the bottom of the brake pad, not on the top. Now let's see what that's all about. All right, let's go over to the Jeep. And we need these. I want you to take a picture of these, John, if you can sneak up on them. Is they all have numbers on. I don't know if you're going to be able to get that, but let's see if you can. Here we go. These are the shims, and you can clearly see that one has a 20 on it.
Doesn't help if you get
Can't
too
see
close.
it?
It's too close. Back up.
Back up. Can you see the 0.20 on there? Maybe?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, so this one's 0.20. You look them on the corner of each one. This is a 0.10, and you keep going. There's 4 different ones in here, and as a Romanian fella I worked with would say, there's ticky and tinny. So there's thick ones and thin ones. This one's 0.25. So we're going to go over to the side of the truck. And I'm just going to show you one piece of service while we're here, because I left this on purpose, is you want to take a file, not a grinder, to this edge, this edge, this edge, and this edge. And just clean that right up nice. And I like to do it with a file, because with a grinder, you can take off too much material. So I'm just going to get that nice, clean, and shiny. Like I had it before, I let it rust on purpose. We're going to clean it on the outside. And if you want to use a grinder, or you want to use something else that goes faster, like I call the whizzy wheel, that's fine, but I like to do it by hand. Here's what we got to look for. Where this ear and this ear goes into this saddle, listen. You move it up and down. There's up and down play. Now what you have to do, these always wear out here, so what they're giving you is a shim to pick up that slack. So you have to take one of these and apply it to the to the pad till it's gone, and it just clips on there just like that. So that one's 10 thousandths. Let's see what happens. Still a little bit too much. So that's not thick enough. So I'm going to find the 2.5. There's a 2.0. Let's go with a 2.0. I think we're going to be somewhere between 20 thousandths of an inch and 25 to pick up the slack. So let's try that one. It's time consuming, but you got to do it. Look, we got it. 20. So now, you might even be able to go 25, but you want to make sure that the pad will slide on the saddle. Okay, so that we've covered that. That is critical. I call this, they call this the toe, but to me this is the heel, that's the toe. I think it's just a mistake, a typo. So you got to make sure that shim, the outside one, does not get shimmed, just the inboard one. And if you don't, you're going to have a chattering brake pad and a lousy brake job when you're done. Number 2. This surface here, we're going to clean it up spotless. You got to make sure it's clean around the studs. I cleaned the whole flange, and I'm going to show you. You might not have air. I generally use this, my whizzy wheel, and I'll go right onto here, and I'll clean out as much as I can. And most of the time, I'll just use my cordless drill. You probably have one kicking around, and I have a number of cleaning wheels. You can buy these as a kit. This works really good. This one works good. And I just get around the studs with this real quick and just clean that up. Get in there, clean it up. Take your time, make sure it's nice and flat. Go around them all. I hope you get the idea. It's a little time consuming, but you know what? This is how you do a great brake job. Clean this hub surface as well. Make sure you got that nice and clean. This is clean all the way around. Then you're going to apply some anti-seize onto this surface here. I don't cake it on, I just put a coating on there so when the rotor goes in, next time it's got to be replaced, and I find that it prevents some squealing. So that's what I do there. At that point, next, we need to take a look at the caliper. And here's what I find. When I order a caliper, here's what not to assume. Don't assume that the rebuilders have done a great job at lubricating the pins. Take a look here. You see lots of goo here. But how much is inside the pin and the bushing? You should be able to. I pull those out, and there is some lube on there. I usually put a little bit more, and I use this. I use the Easy Slider. Sil Glide, I call it Sil Glide still for years. It's a silicone-based grease. This is great product. Again, not sponsoring our show or my person. Check your caliper. Can you move the pin and the bushing freely? Check it, because I had a caliper that's on the opposite side. We're going to show you a side that's done. I could barely move this because they didn't put enough lube inside the bushing. So I ended up taking the pins and the bushings right out and redoing them myself, because that's how easy that should move back and forth so the caliper can apply and disengage the pads. If you can't move that sleeve like this, then you better take it out and have a look at it. And it's easy. Just pull the rubbers back, pull it through, and I will put more lube on this anyway. There's not much on there. Take a look. There's not much lube on there at all. So I'm going to show you how I do one of them so that you can do it yourself. Service the caliper before it goes on. Don't fall into the trap that whoever assembled this on the assembly line was in a good mood that day and decided to really do a great job. That's how much I put on there. Now you can see it. Now get some down in here, just a little bit off your fingers. Now I'm going to put that pin back in. So just work it in there. Hold the boot, pop it through, push it forward, do the other side so that the rubber falls into the groove, and now you're done. Pretty much finished. But don't assume always. Same with when you get alternators, make sure the pulley nut is tight on the pulley. Check stuff, because we are dealing with assembly, we are dealing with people, and not everyone's in a good mood when they come to work, so you may get some lube in there and you may not. So I'm going to push this one out and show you the same thing. On this side, look how much lube's on there. Not much. Not much. And so what does that mean? That means if you just take this out of the box and assemble it, I guarantee you within 90 days, the pins are going to start to seize up and your brake pads are going to wear out prematurely. So again, take some of the Sil Glide, apply it there, move it around until it's nice and lubed. Put some down in here from the other side, because there's O-rings inside here. Push it through the boot. It'll go. If you can't get it one way, you just go in the other way. But it'll go in there. And when it goes in, you'll be all set. Just wiggle it around. It's going. It's too slippery now, but don't worry about it. You'll get it in there. There we go. Once you get that in there, see how I'm doing this? Push the rubber over from this side, slip it in till it grabs the boot on the other side, and then voila. Now it moves even better. Now you're not going to have a pin in like 90 days starting to seize up. I've run into that a lot of times. Thirdly, make sure you buy a decent enough product where you get a new banjo bolt and 2 copper washers. Should always be 2. Never use the old ones. They're crush washers. So what does that mean? They're only good one time. If I was in a field service and I didn't have the washers, I would flip the washers over and I'd have to reuse them in the field. But in this case, we have everything we need. So make sure you use them. One goes on the top through the banjo fitting and then right into the caliper. And you assemble everything, put your pads in. Make sure you put lube on the contact points for the brake pads where I showed you where the shims should go. I use the same product on there. Some of you might use anti-seize, whichever one is your favorite flavor of the day. Either one is a good fit, an absolutely good fit. So after all that's said and done, and I put it all together, and I bleed the brakes, what I generally do with the caliper is, once I have the pads on, everything's locked down, I put a clear piece of hose on here, and I just put it down into a service bucket, and I open the bleeder, and I let it gravity bleed. So that way, I'm not going to pound some air into the system. I do a gravity bleed first, then I close the fitting, then I'll have Skippy get behind the wheel and pump the brakes for me, nice and soft. No ramming like this. That turns air bubbles into thousands of air bubbles, and you can have a low pedal the next morning when the customer takes it home. So nice and smooth. Down, up, down, up. So as the person's going down, we're opening the bleeder. When they're down at the bottom, they should say down, close the bleeder. 2 or 3 times, you've got all the air out just like that. But gravity bleeding makes it a whole lot easier on an old master cylinder. If you're not changing the master cylinder, then you're dealing with an older master cylinder. You can avoid blowing the seals out in the master and not having to replace the master beforehand. So that's pretty much it for a front brake disc brake job, whether it's a rear disc brake job. Other than the emergency shoes, do it exactly the way I showed you. Don't assume that everything is in the box the way the parts come out. Everything's done right and well. Check it. You don't want to have a failure down the road because you didn't. So when I put these pins in, I will put more Sil Glide on them and put them back in. But I like looking for products where I'm getting a new bleeder screw, I'm getting a new banjo screw, I'm getting 2 copper crush washers, new bolts and hardware in the caliper. They weren't expensive, but they are quality. They are quality. So I'm very, very happy with that. And that's what makes a great brake job. And I'll tell you, you will not have a brake job come back if you follow that rule of thumb. It's been with me. I've been in the mechanics since I was 13, licensed at 1988, and I've never had a brake job come back. Ever. Do it right, do it well, and do it exactly the same every time, and you won't be disappointed. And whoever's vehicle you're working on, they won't be disappointed either. So if I can do it, you can do it. Take your time. Work clean. That's why I'm working outside, I have a rag sticking out of one side, so if I quickly have to wipe my hands off, and then I put on my Fred gloves, especially when it's a balmy 39 degrees here in Fort Erie. So till next time, come back for more of Car Connection, where we always do things exactly the same, only different. The air hose is out and the coffee's on, and it's always hot. And put the coffee on at your house, because we're coming to see you. Well, thank you for stopping by the Car Connection Workshop right here on YouTube. Don't forget to come back and join us for another segment. So like, share, tag, and follow, and ding that bell so that you don't miss a single edition of Car Connection. So till next time, keep it under 100 and put the coffee on, because we're coming to your house.